What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another Modern video, and this week we're going to be looking at a deck that features some cards that are near and dear to my heart and just overall an archetype that has continued to change and mold itself into basically what the Modern format wants and finds a way to thrive, and I think always continues to be at worst like a tier 2 deck in the format that does have some upside of playing it and definitely proves and shows that if you have like a lot of skill or you're at least very dedicated to an archetype or a deck or a strategy or anything like that, that you can find success almost regardless of what it is. So today we're going to be taking a look at Grixis Death Shadow and exactly what has changed and how it's molded and became a deck that people continue to try to innovate and thrive with in the modern format. Let's go ahead and take a look at the deck. So here we have the Grixis Death Shadow list piloted by McWinsauce that took a 6th place of a Modern Challenge on August 7th. I looked through some of the other deck lists on here, and I just didn't really like how essentially how they were built. There's like plenty of 5.0s and stuff like down here from as late or as early, I guess, as like August 26th. You have August 23rd and stuff like that. But this is a main deck configuration that I would be the most comfortable playing with if I were to play it card for card. But before getting too deep into Grixis Death Shadow and all the changes and kind of innovations and stuff players have made, if you have not already subscribed to the channel, you should do so. We're sitting at 85 subscribers right now, trying to get to 100 before the end of the year. I think that's super possible to do. So if you enjoy modern content, you enjoy Pioneer content, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you know when I post videos. Also, feel free to join the Discord server that is in the description of this video. You can go ahead, follow the link, join the Discord server, talk about Magic in general, modern Pioneer, commander, even like standard if you really want to, all that fun stuff. Just trying to build like a community there, just for like kind of a place for people to like hang out and just talk, a game that I hold near and dear to my heart most days, when I'm actually like playing well. Anyway, let's go ahead and look at Grixis Death Shadow. So if you've been playing Modern, I don't know, since probably like 2016, 2017, Death Shadow's been kind of a staple of like the format. I mean, it's been, like this card here, Death Shadow, is probably one of the best creatures you can play in the format. A 1 mana 13/13 gets -X, where X is your life total. But a lot of the time, it is like 1 mana 6/6, 1 mana 7/7. It's bigger than a lot of probably the biggest creature period that's in the format. If you like discount like Murktide Regent and stuff like that, because like Murktide technically can grow bigger than a Death Shadow, but a 7 mana 8/8, technically, or 2 mana 8/8, pales in comparison to the 1 mana 8/8. If we're keeping score, to be honest with you. But you see decks like this, like play Jengatha just because it gets to play a free companion, doesn't want that 14th or 15th slot. Others play like Murktide and they play like more spell based, but I kind of like this version. Playing the four, the full Death Shadow, the full four. Playing 4 Ragavan, I think that's almost necessary for any like red based like kind of control-y mid-rangey decks. This card is just very good, and snowballs way out of control when this deck does get to cast like 2 spells a turn. For Ledger Shredder, this card is proven. It's proven its worth in Pioneer and in Modern, and I think is going to see play for a while, especially in a format where you get to follow it up with like a Mishra's Bauble and like turn 2 and immediately get to make a 2/4, or just like sculpt your hand and stuff like that. 3 Dragon Rage Channeler, obviously getting the bonus of getting to surveil, put cards in your graveyard to feed like this Croxa, and to also just dig past like other lands and stuff like that to ensure that you're hitting spells and that you're double spelling a turn to like cast these or to keep growing like these ledger shutters and kind of let them get out of hand. As far as like the threats go, obviously like Death Shadow is like to me like an A tier threat. The card that it really hates is Solitude, because obviously if a shadow gets solituded, then all your Death Shadows will die. um, but in the case that you don't get solituded, out of the game essentially by Death Shadow, you do have like these other threats, and again, like if you don't get Solitude, Death Shadow just ends the game super quickly. But you have some of these other nerds like Ragavan, obviously, a lot of the time is going to catch the like Solitude or just the removal spells that come from your opponent. So it kind of clears the way for Death Shadow. Even though Ragavan is like on a power level scale a more uh, threatening threat, Death Shadow does threaten to end the game a lot quicker than Ragavan does. So if you get like a hit or two in with like Ragavan and then like your opponent kills it, then you're just able to play like Death Shadow. You get so much card advantage and stuff. Like these two in tandem are like really powerful. Ledger Shredder again, just like it's a big evasive threat that like while it dies to Fatal Push, quickly just kind of grows out of control and beats a lot of like the other spells and stuff like in the format. Um, the other like removal spells in the format. So like eventually this card does just end up chunking your opponent for 3, 4, 5, 6 damage, each attack, and can again threaten to end the game very quickly, and does take kind of the heat off of your Death Shadows as well. Um, really just so you can kind of win the game with one or two swings with this guy. Croxa, just with the amount of like manipulation, the conniving from like Ledger Shredder, the mana that you make from treasures off of like Ragavan, and even like getting to surveil cards with Dragon Rage Channeler, is you're very easily able to hit your fourth land drop on turn 4, if need be, also being able to find the Croxa and get into your graveyard or just be able to play it and get it into the graveyard that way, and to continue to bring it back for its escape cost. While there's like a ton of cards in the format, there's like deal with this and definitely like hurt you as far as like investing so many resources into playing this card and spending so much mana to do so. Um, it is a card that's like fine. Like if your opponent's like out of cards and like you're forcing them to top deck, this does get to chunk them for 9, presumably every turn. So definitely good on that front in my opinion. Now some of the other spells. 4 Thoughtseize, 4 Unholy Heat are almost a must. I would say like the Drown Lock and the Expressive Iteration are also locks as well. Drown the Lock just usually always is like a counterspell, basically counterspell in this deck, with the versatility of like getting to remove creatures, which is awesome. Iteration probably being the best draw spell in the format. Essentially just being like a draw 2. You have a decent amount of free spells and 1 mana spells, so like casting Iteration after you've like hit with a Ragavan, a lot of the time you're going to be able to cast whatever card that you find with the Expressive Iteration. A further manipulation of your deck, so you either draw more lands when you want to, not draw lands when you don't want to. Just a very good card, very very powerful 2 mana spell. Does a lot more honestly than what it feels like it should do. Um, 2 Fatal Push. Fatal Push does remove a decent amount of like the threats in the format, but does not threaten like Murktides and things like that. So that's kind of like why I believe Unholy Heat kind of gets a nod over Fatal Push. Unholy Heat kills a lot of the smaller creatures like in the early game, while obviously towards like the third and fourth turn of the game and onwards, Unholy Heat's going to be dealing 6, and also has the added bonus of hitting planeswalkers as well. Fatal Push still good in its own right, killing things that cost up to 4 mana or less, which ends up being a lot of the format when you think about it. Minus like the threats from like the Murktide deck, but definitely has a little less push, if you will, versus Unholy Heat, for the fact that Unholy Heat has the versatility of kind of like leveling up and killing even bigger creatures that are higher than 4 cost, especially like the Murktides and like the Titans and stuff like that, and having the bonus of going towards like planeswalkers and stuff. That said, there is also 2 Terminate in the deck. Straight up destroy target creature, can't be regenerated. For 2 mana, very good. It's efficient for what it does, um, and kind of fills the gaps where like Drown the Lock, Unholy Heat, and Fatal Push could possibly miss, especially in the early turns. 4 Mishra's Bauble, essentially a staple for like these shadow decks. Period. The decks that want to be playing like Ragavan and Dragon Rage Channeler. and even Ledger Shredder as well. Like it's a free way to like enable Ledger Shredders, enable Dragon Rage channelers on turn ones, so on and so forth. And it just replaces itself, gets you information. So many tricks with this card that I've gone over dozens of times, like on my channel amongst different videos. The fact of just having Mishra's Bauble in your deck, and there's about 15 million and one tricks you can do to make the one card that you get to look at matter, is insane and could probably deserve its own video, to be honest with you. But uh, at the floor, Mishra's Bauble can get you a little bit of information what your opponent's doing and draw you a card, and has these synergies with Dragon Rage Channeler and Ledger Shredder as well. Also, just being a free card for like Crocs and things like that. All right, moving on. One dress down in the main could be a way to blank the elementals, the pitch elementals. Can mess with like the Yawgmoth combo and things like that. And in the worst case, your Death Shadows become 13/13s, and you could just, play two Death Shadows on like turn two, feasibly possible, and then you just dress down and hit your opponent for 26 damage. Life's good. Dress down. Tons of interesting interactions. I implore you to do some research with this card if you choose to play a deck like this or a deck that plays dress down, because there's a lot of interactions and things that you need to know and how things work to really get the full benefit of playing dress down in your deck. The mana base is super simple. You don't get any of the, like, you don't get Takanuma, you don't get Otawara, and you don't want like Shizuni or whatever the heck the red one is. So pretty simple mana base. You have a snow-covered swamp, snow-covered fort, or snow-covered mountain, snow-covered swamp, and then the rest are just fetch lands and shock lands, obviously, so you can deal as much damage to yourself as possible to get your Death Shadows online. Um, and unfortunately, you want to keep like the lower land count just so you have enough lands to like play Kroxa if you need to, and then from there you just don't want to see anything past like 3 or 4 lands. The sideboard, like Alpine Moon, can deal like mess with like Urza's sagas and stuff like that. Even the land that bolts you for having mountains, Valakut, that's the one. Flusterstorm, just a super cheap interactive like counterspell that you could play against like Murktide and things like that. Spell Pierce, another like super cheap way of like messing with other decks that want to try to interact with you. Another dress down because again messing with like elementals and just having essentially a built-in, make my shadows huge without having to kill myself. Is pretty sweet. Turok against the elementals decks, pretty good when it just dodges all of its like main forms of removal, and eventually can just get kicked and you know run your opponent out of resources, and then hurt your opponent pretty quickly. Kolaghan's Command does, just always does a lot of things, and until the end of the time, Kolaghan's Command is probably going to be played in like these Grixis Shadow decks until there's something that does what Kolaghan's Command does for 2 or 1 mana. Unlicensed Hearst, messing with like the graveyard decks, especially like the Murktide decks, and is a card that just gets so huge so fast that it could just end the game on its own. And finally, two Mystical Dispute for like the control-based decks. Just having like a 1 mana like catch-all counter for like their blue spells is pretty sweet. So that's Grixis Shadow. While it's definitely not the deck that it used to be, especially like when it started to come out after like humans kind of fell off, and even before like humans really like became a deck too, like where it was like at its best. Uh, Death Shadow has always been a deck that can hang around. It finds ways to adapt, overcome its shortcomings, and the players themselves get smarter in like those matchups as well. And it's one of the few decks that I've seen that, regardless of how bad a matchup like might be for this deck, or basically how much it wants to dodge certain matchups, it finds a way to win and not necessarily tech against those matchups, but ultimately, the players themselves playing smarter with the resources that they have while keeping their deck good against like a general metagame are able to pick their spots and find better lines against the decks that they are bad against. So, yeah, that's Grixis Shadow. That's kind of my take on the deck. I think it's definitely worth playing. Definitely not the best deck by any stretch that you could be playing in Modern. There is better decks than this, But if you want to play a kind of feel smart, mid-rangey aggro combo control deck is kind of like what I like to call these decks. Go ahead, give it a try for yourself. It will definitely kind of be like a brain bender with all these different interactions, big and small. So that's gonna do it for me this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like on the video. If you haven't already, again, please consider subscribing to the channel, ring the notification bell so you know when I post new videos. And I try to post 3 to 4 times a week. Um, Also, join the Discord server. The link is in the description of this video and past and present videos in future. Yeah, that. Go to the link, join the server. It's quite a few people that have already joined. I'm very kind of surprised, but it's awesome. Love talking to people. The more the merrier. And yeah, that's gonna be it for me in this video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you all in the next one.